Hello everyone, my name is Ella. Welcome to another video and welcome to my bedroom. Technically I have filmed in my bedroom. All of my Marvel videos I have filmed in here, just over there facing my vanity, but I have never filmed on my bed before. And it's a very dreary, cold, wet day out. It's been raining since I got off work at 2:30. Rained all last night, rained early this morning, so I'm just kind of sitting on my bed in warm clothes, just vibing, and I thought I would tell some stories from work, since all I do recently is go to work, come home, relax, and sleep. So I'm going to tell some stories about my job at Volcano Bay. A disclaimer just for my safety: all views, thoughts, expressions, anything voiced in this video are my views alone and do not reflect on Universal Orlando Resort as a company. These are just some stories that I've had with guests that I have dealt with. Some of them are good. The last one that I'm going to tell is terrible. It was the first time a guest has made me cry. The only time so far, and hopefully we'll keep it that way. But we're going to start with some feel-good stories first. So this story is a very short little story. A lot of my interactions at work are very brief because I am scanning people's tickets to let them into the park, so they are with me basically a minute, not even that. Most of them are like 10 seconds and then they're through the park. Unless I'm opening, in which case we go out there about 15 to 30 minutes before the park opens, and we talk to guests and, let them ask questions and stuff like that. But this particular story was not from opening. It was, I want to say it was like a midday. We'd had a little bit of a lull in guests coming in, so it was kind of, calm and chill. And this family came up, mom and dad, 3 little boys. Each of them had a Transformer, and they were so excited about their little Transformers toy, and they were excitedly showing me how it changed from the car into the robot and then back, and they were so excited. And so when I finished scanning all of them in, one of them was walking off and he started singing the theme song. He goes, "Transformers!" And so I, being a nerd who has also never seen an episode of Transformers before in my life, called back, "Robots in disguise," and the boys just lit up, and the mom thought it was so funny that I knew the theme song too. And I don't know, it was a cute, happy little moment. I love having happy little moments with the guests that I get to welcome into the park. I know I am very small, a very, very small part of their day, but I do try to make all of the guests happy, and I try to connect with them on some kind of personal level when I have the time to, and that is just one small moment of joy that I got to bring to that family, and I hope it made the beginning of their day great. Another time, this was at opening, and I want to say this was not our early opening. I want to say this was it was 9 a.m. open, so I was on the clock at 8:30. And it was this family, kind of a larger family. It was like several adults and then 2 kids. They'd been to the parks, been to Volcano Bay already, and they were coming back just to ride a few things that morning so they could go back to the other parks. And they were trying to guess what time we were gonna let them in, because sometimes we do let them in a few minutes early if there's a huge crowd. And if the inside of the park is ready for guests to come in. So they were trying to play a guessing game about when I was going to start letting people in and stuff like that. And they were trying to figure out who the manager was so they could watch to see when she was going to be ready to give us the thumbs up to go ahead. Just fun games like that. And, we kind of chatted and talked and laughed the whole time. And eventually we opened the gates and we let them in and everything. And I didn't really think anything else of it. They were fun to talk to. But I personally didn't think it was anything of a spectacular guest interaction or anything like that. We were literally just talking and making jokes and stuff like that. But I went on my first break a few hours later, And right as I was heading back in, one of my managers called me over and was like, hey, listen, I have this service star for you. And service stars are little awards that we get. Those ones I think are specifically from the managers. And basically it's when a guest approaches them about a certain team member, me in this case, and basically sings my praises to that manager to let them know how good of a job I did with them. And I actually have my service star. Let me go get it so I can read what was on it because it was very sweet. Okay, so these are our little service stars, and then I don't know what I'm allowed to show on the front, but that's what it looks like. It's filled out with my information, my manager's information, stuff like that. And then they name it and date it, and then how many points I got for this specific interaction. And so this one says, Dear, my name, thank you for delivering extraordinary experiences by, and then my manager wrote, positively interacting with guests prior to EPA, Early Park Access, and continuously doing so throughout your day. Guests said you were awesome. So that was a surprise to me because, I mean, like I said, I do that every day. I say hi, I hold conversations with people so they're not bored while they're waiting for us to open the gates in the morning. So, it didn't necessarily stick out to me, but it did to those guests, and that's what's important because we want guests to be happy. We want to leave a lasting impression on them so that they enjoy their time and want to come back later. So to be rewarded for that is just, I don't know, like, I guess it feels good because I know I'm doing something right. Not to say that there's like anything that I can really do wrong with this job. I mean, any job has things that can go wrong and do go wrong sometimes. But I don't know, like it's just, I don't know, I feel validated, like I'm doing something right with my job. So these service stars, these ones we can use. I think you have to get up to 10 points. This one was worth 2 points. But once we get up to 10 points, we can exchange that for a $5 Universal gift card. So that's exciting. So I am 1/5 the way there to a gift card. So that's fun. And then this is an applause card, or buck. I think they're called applause bucks. This is specifically from our management noticing something that we did. So whereas the service stars are someone going to management to talk about us, applause bucks are from management noticing something that we have done. And this one was about a guest who team members have comp passes, free passes. We get 3 every quarter. For us to use for our family and friends and stuff like that. We cannot sell them. We cannot gain any kind of monetary value from people for these comp passes. If we do, we get fired because those tickets were given to us for free and we should not be selling them. Clearly, very simple concept. But sometimes people do not know that the tickets that they are buying from people are comp passes, and technically I think that's what this situation was. But it was a large family. They had printed off their tickets, which were comp passes, which are currently blocked out of Volcano Bay. They'd gotten them from a travel agent, according to the story that they told me. And so, obviously, I couldn't let them in with it. Played it off really, calmly, because I didn't want them to know that anything was wrong. But I took their tickets, called my manager over and was like, hey, they said they bought these from a travel agent. And she was like, okay, cool, let me get their information. And she did, and she took their tickets inside and wasted a lot of time basically because she was trying to get investigations over there to figure out what exactly had happened with these tickets. And like I said, I personally think this was a case of they bought the tickets from someone and didn't realize that they were buying comp passes. In which case it wasn't really their fault. But we do have people that buy passes, the comp passes from their friends, and they'll get upset when the comp passes don't work, and then, they'll say, I paid X amount of money for these tickets, at which point we have to take the tickets from them physically, and ask them where they got their tickets from, like what team member gave them to them, so that the team member can be contacted and fired. I've never personally had that happen to me yet, but I did have this one with them. And like I said, I really think that they didn't know that they were buying it, because there are people that will cheat people out with tickets. They'll sell them tickets, and then they're either expired tickets or they're tickets that don't work on that date, stuff like that. So I really think that's what the case was with this specific family, which really sucks, because we do really want people to get into the parks. That's our goal. Like, we will do literally everything we can to get people into the parks, but sometimes outside forces make it very hard, and it makes our job hard. But really, we do what we can to get people in. Yesterday is going to have its own section in this video, because yesterday was the first time that I extended my shift. It was only by an hour, but it was also the first time that I really worked guest services, which is not my area. It is a completely separate entity from entrance operations, but we were short on staff yesterday, and we hit a code white. I think we had a white and a silver, which basically means that all the attractions have to shut down because there's lightning in the area. People always interpret that as the park is closing and that they absolutely have to leave, which is not the case. You can stay in the park. We do not ever close the park unless it's too cold outside to be in the water, which happens maybe 5 times a year, because we never really get cold weather here, or if there's some kind of safety regulation that is being broken. Like a couple summers ago, they reworked some of the wiring for the volcano, and they didn't ground it properly, and people were getting electrocuted in the wave pool. So obviously we had to close the park for that, because it was a very dangerous situation and people were getting hurt. But so we do not close the park unless it's very extreme conditions. But so yesterday, and it wasn't even that it really rained that much. It rained for maybe 30 minutes yesterday, but we had lightning in the area, which is why we had to close all the rides. And we just got an influx of people that wanted to exchange their tickets for another day, or they wanted a refund or something, because they had been at the theme park and now everything was closed, and they didn't know, and we didn't know whether or not the rides were going to open back up again. Because we do have to wait 30 minutes after the last lightning strike before we can open things up. And anytime we get a lightning strike within that 30 minutes, the 30 minutes resets. So it can take a long time, and sometimes people do not want to wait around to see if it'll work again, if the rides will open again. So they had a lot of people coming up wanting refunds and stuff like that. And when we are in a code white or silver, we have to close 2 of our guest services windows because they are facing outside, out from undercover. So it's a hazard for them, which doesn't make sense to me, because then they have me stationed outside of those windows to tell guests that they can't go there, which I feel like putting someone there makes people want to come there more, but that's my opinion, and it does not reflect the Universal Orlando Resort Company. But so that's what I had to do yesterday. I came back from my break. I only had an hour left in my scheduled shift, and they kept me over there the whole time. And it was raining on and off, so my clothes were soaked through. But basically, I stood there for an hour. It got towards the end of my shift, and one of my team captains was like, "Can you stay at all?" And I was like, "How long?" And she said, "An hour." And I was like, "You know what? Sure. Yeah, I can stay. An hour is fine. I'll do that." And so I did. I ended up staying until 6, doing the same thing, just keeping people away from those windows because they were closed. And you would not believe the number of people that 30 minutes of rain and an hour tops of a lightning delay ruins their whole entire day. We have people that have been there since park open, and then we get rain a couple of hours before closing, and they want a refund for their whole day. And it's a mess. And like I said, that is not my area at all. And like every time someone would say that they were looking for something from Lost and Found and I would run in to go look, I just kept saying, this is above my pay grade, this is above my pay grade, because that is not my job. Like, my job is literally just to scan people in to the parks and make sure that no one takes our little Tapu Tapu bracelets outside of the entrance, because those cost a lot of money. But yeah, so last night it was a whole thing. It was the first time I extended. So I ended up being there 7 hours, and I think technically at Volcano Bay, if you work more than 6 hours, you have to get a lunch. Obviously, that couldn't happen yesterday because it was raining, and they kept me over because they needed people. So I couldn't very well take a 30-minute lunch. But it was a mess. But I made it, and I actually had a customer, again, a guest, who, poor thing, had been having trouble all day with her Tapu Tapu, and she'd already been at customer service, or guest services, way earlier in the day, was still having issues, had waited in line for 2 hours for food, and then they lost her food order, so then she had to wait 45 more minutes, and she was just frustrated that things hadn't really gone how she needed them to, and had mentioned to me personally that she wasn't sure why she would ever come to this park again. But she mentioned who she had talked to earlier, who had helped her out, and who they all had thought had fixed her problem. So I had to run back in there and try to find them and get them out there. And I think they got it sorted out. But she took down my name and several of the other people's names and expressed that she was going to sing our praises on social media. We have it's UO for Universal Orlando. Fist bump is the hashtag. So UO fist bump. You can use it on Twitter, Facebook, stuff like that. And basically people can just tell the world or whoever's reading that tweet or post that you did a good job at your job, basically. So she took all of our names down, and then she left, and then I guess a little bit later when they decided to leave the park, she specifically sought out my manager and specifically mentioned me by name, that I had been a help, which I felt like I really wasn't. All I did was listen to her story and go find the person that had been helping her earlier. But she mentioned me by name to my manager, and my manager mentioned to my supervisor that they were going to try and get me another of these applause bucks. But it was very busy last night, so it never happened, and that particular manager isn't in again until tomorrow, so we'll have to revisit that to see if that ends up happening. I frankly do not care if I get an applause buck. I'm just happy that we were able to get her day turned around even just a little bit, and even if it was just at the end of the day. Because like I said, we do want people to enjoy their time with us, and we want them to want to come back. So we really try to fix any bad issue, any, problem they had at the park, because we do want them to have felt like they didn't waste their money or their time or anything like that. And then today, the last hour of my shift, I did the same thing because once again it started raining and we got a code silver. So I had to stand in front of guest services again, and I don't know how many times I ran back and forth between there and into guest services to ask them questions because guests wanted answers that I don't have because I'm not guest services, or I'd go into the Lost Found to get things for people, and I reunited people so many times with their stuff today. I was so happy to be able to do that. But yeah, so that was a whole nother thing. It wasn't as bad as yesterday in some ways, but then in some ways it was, because yesterday I wasn't really supposed to stay there for 2 hours. I was mostly supposed to just stand there so that I could cut off the line so they could close the window because of the lightning. But then I had guests keep coming up, and then I forgot to mention this earlier, I had a team member come from inside the park with a lost child, which also isn't my area of expertise as an entrance operations team member. But we have a whole process that we have to go through with kids to, set up a way to contact their parent. And we never even got to get through that process because the one family that was at the window was literally there for most of the 2 hours that I was stood at that window. I don't know what took them so long to get a refund, but that's what happened. But we did, like, as soon as I mentioned to a manager that we hadn't gotten the information that we needed to set up the whole lost kid thing, her mom came running, and it was all set, and it was happily ever after for them. So I'm really glad that I get help them with that. But so yesterday was a whole mess, but today I feel like I had more angry guests, specifically angry about the fact that the park was closed, which it wasn't, because we do not close the park, but so many. And it's, the funny thing is, it's literally like 30 minutes. Things close down for 30 minutes, and all heck breaks loose. Everyone tries to exit the park, and then everyone also wants a refund, but then they want a refund, but then they want to make sure that they can get back in the park for the day, and it's a whole mess. And then people don't understand why these windows are closed, because I'm standing out there, and someone was there earlier, so why can't they help them now? So yeah, a whole lot of back and forth to answer questions that I didn't know the answers to. A whole lot of running back and forth to the lost and found to try and find things for people, while also standing in the rain again, because it started raining again. So, a whole mess. But now I'm going to tell the absolute worst guest story that I have so far. The guest that made me cry. This was 2 weeks ago now? I don't know. I don't really have a concept of time. That's just the way it's been since the pandemic started. But, so a couple weeks ago, I was at my spot at the entrance to take tickets, scan tickets and stuff like that. And as I mentioned before, Volcano Bay has these little bracelets that are called Tapu Tapu. Basically, you wear them all day at the parks. They get you on and off the rides using a virtual line. So you don't have to wait in a physical line. You just tap that on the ride, and it puts your place in line and then lets you know when you can go back to that ride. But because it is universal property, it cannot go back to the entrance of the park. Like, once they are scanned and once I give them their Tapu Tapu, they have to go into the park. And some people try to take it back out because they either need to go to guest services or past sales or the bathroom or something like that. In which case, we either tell them that they're going to have to leave their Tapu with me, the person that is scanning them in, or they'll just have to set it, give it to us, and then we put it in our, reject pile, and then they'll get a new one when they come back in, if it's been after 7 minutes. But this particular family, it was a huge family, but it was split up into twos. Like, it was this group of family, and then it was, a mother and her daughter. So this whole group goes through, and then they get their tapus, and I guess when I look down to get more to scan the next party in, they go back over to guest services. And as I'm scanning the next part of their group in, the mother and daughter, I'm realizing that, and I was like, did they go back over there to guest services? And she was like, oh, well, yeah. And I was like, okay, they're not supposed to do that. So I scan her and her daughter in, and she turns around to go to guest services. And I was like, ma'am, excuse me, you cannot take the Tapu Tapu on that side of the entrance. And she's like, well, that's my sister. I'm going to go over there with her. And I said, okay, then I just need to take your bracelets back. And she keeps telling me, no, she's going over there with her sister. So I step around my tiki, which I'm not supposed to do. We're not supposed to leave it unattended. And I step over there and I said, I need to have your bracelets back. Her daughter gives me hers back. The mom throws her hands up, gets pissy, storms over to guest services. At that point, I'm terrified that I'm going to get in trouble for leaving my tiki. I'm frustrated because this lady wasn't listening to me, and I'm worried that she's going to try and get me out of a job. So I start crying, but I also have a whole line of guests in front of me, so I'm sitting there trying to scan people in. I start crying, and I'm like, hi, welcome to Volcano Bay, enjoy your day. But a lot of the people that were there, saw what happened, so I had several ask me, are you okay? is everything all right? Stuff like that. And I'm just frustrated. That was very upsetting to deal with. And so a little bit later, after I get my manager to let her know what happened, uh, the lady and her daughter come back, and she's like, do we have to go back through here? And I said, well, not me specifically, figuring she had a problem with me. I said, it doesn't have to be me specifically, but you are going to have to go through one of these people here at the entrance. And she goes, okay, then can you give back the bracelet that you jerked away from my daughter? Which I didn't. Her daughter handed it to me. But anyways, I had to fix my camera. It stopped recording. But so the mom goes, can you give the bracelet back to my daughter that you jerked away from her? And I'm like, sure, I have it right here. And I did. I saved it. I set it aside so I knew it was hers. So I give it back to her. Obviously, I'm still upset and I'm still crying a little bit. And the mom looks at me and then looks at her daughter and says, see, she's crying because she feels bad. And I lost it, just started sobbing. And my manager said, no, you're okay. Go inside. I'll handle the guests. So I feel terrible that I'm just like burst into tears in front of all these people. But it was just frustrating. And like to be talked to like that while I'm on the job was just horrible. But so I go in there, I calm down a little bit, and then a few minutes later she comes in, lets me know that I can stay in there as long as I need to calm down and everything. And I apologized for crying and everything and just mentioned that I was frustrated and worried that I was going to get in trouble or that she was going to get me in trouble. And the manager said, oh yeah, she tried to get you in trouble, but I told her that you did exactly what you're trained to do and that you would not be getting in trouble. Which was nice to hear because I like knowing that my team members and my co-workers all have my back, that they're all there to support me and that they all, stand up for me. So that was really comforting. And then she also mentioned that all of the guests that had seen what happened mentioned that I handled it very well and that I had, obviously continued to go on and do my job as well as could be expected after everything that had happened. And that also made me feel better because, I tried not to let that get to me, even though I was very obviously shaken up and crying. And so for guests to see me go through that and then still tell my manager that I handled it very well was just very nice of them. And it made me feel a lot better about the situation. But yeah, for the longest time after that, like 3 or 4 days after that, anytime I would think of that happening, I just started crying again. Not because I was upset, not necessarily because I was embarrassed, but just because the whole situation was frustrating. Like, we have rules and you have to follow them. And when you don't, then yes, you're going to get in trouble. Yes, you're going to get told that you can't do what you're doing. But then it was, I don't know, just like the way that she like gaslit me afterwards and was just like, see, she's crying because she feels bad. No, honey, I'm crying because you frustrated the heck out of me and now you're embarrassing me in front of all of these guests. Like, I don't feel bad. I was doing my job. I know what my job is. I have been here for 1.5 years. I know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know. Like, it was so frustrating. And that's what I hate about myself. Like, I cry when I'm frustrated. I cry for a lot of reasons, but I cry when I'm frustrated. And so, like, that whole situation was just the worst for me. But I was so glad that everyone had my back because, like, that really made me feel like part of the team. Because while I have been with the Tiki Entry team for 1.5 years, most of that 1.5 years has been furloughed and not really there. So I'm still kind of, like, in the process of, like, not really like meeting, because a lot of them I do know from last year, but like I guess re-meeting and then getting to know new team members that have also been hired. It's just really nice, and just knowing that they all support me and understand what I'm going through when I have tough guests like that was just really made me feel like I'm not alone. So I really appreciated that very much. So yeah, those are just a few stories that I've had from working at Volcano Bay. This ended up being a lot longer than I thought it would be. I thought this would maybe be like a 10-15 minute video, but I've got about 30 minutes of footage, so I'm gonna have fun editing that tonight. But yeah, so that's that for this video. I think next week I'm gonna do something a little bit different since it is Pride Month and I did want to do at least one Pride video. Next week I'm going to be talking about my journey as a member of the LGBTQ family. I'm just gonna talk about, you know, where I started and where I am now, and just my experience existing as a queer person, and stuff like that. So if that's not something that you want to watch, I totally understand. But also, if it's not something you want to watch because you're homophobic, please leave my channel, because there is no home for homophobic people. In my channel, there's no space for that. So I'd rather you leave now before I have to block you. But anyways, so that will be next Wednesday's video. If you watch me for my Marvel content, I will be back this Friday with my discussion about episode 2 of Loki, which I'm really excited about because some big stuff is supposed to happen in the second episode. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and if you'd like to be notified of when I post a new video, go ahead and click that little bell icon down there. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Bye!